Because of you, Sam, I am who I am now," Yvonne said, with teary eyes, looking up at me through her glasses. She leaned hard into my chest. "Please, stay with me, Yvonne." I couldn't hold back any longer and hugged her tightly. "My name is Sam Collins. I'm a 32-year-old single man. I'm currently a licensed clinical psychologist working at a mental care center. But recently, I've been thinking about quitting my job. In fact, my boss, the director of the clinic, saw me as a threat and constantly attacks me with a high-handed attitude. Sam, it's a miracle someone like you, a dropout, could become a clinical psychologist, taking 4 years to graduate from an online high school. What a laugh the clinic users would have if they knew. The center director said so and denied me everything. Actually, I had been terribly harassed at school in junior high and had to go to a private online high school instead of a regular one. I was so hesitant to interact with people that I often stayed at home. To be honest, my parents also thought it would be impossible for me to reintegrate into society. They probably thought that I, who was afraid of communication and stayed at home, would not be able to adapt to society. I myself could not imagine that a happy future would come my way. But I was blessed with a fateful encounter that changed me. The online high school had a male school counselor with a clinical psychologist license who was always there for me. "Sam, you're still young. You can start over as many times as you need. Take your time and think about what you want to do in the future," he encouraged me warmly. At the beginning of high school, I had already lost hope for my life, but this encounter made me start to see a brighter future. I want to become a clinical psychologist like him and help people. With that thought in mind, I started to study hard to go to the university of my choice. Though I was a high school dropout, I ended up taking 4 years to graduate, but I finally got into the psychology department of my desired college. University life was tough, but I was able to become a clinical psychologist, and I was very satisfied. However, to be honest, I was not satisfied with my situation. Ever since I started working at this mental health clinic, I've been mostly doing administrative work and chores, rarely counseling. According to the director, it's too early for you to do counseling. Of course, administrative work and chores are important, so I was happy to do them if needed. But being told I'm not qualified to do counseling was honestly hurtful. But the director was indeed well-versed in this industry and had a career. The fact that he evaluated me as too early to do counseling might mean that I was not suited to be a clinical psychologist. After finishing work, I sighed and walked alone through the city. It was already past 6 p.m., but it was still very hot, being August. In fact, a woman in her 50s who was walking in front of me had been wiping her sweat with a handkerchief. She seemed very hot, but I wondered if she would be all right. As I was worrying about her, to my surprise, she suddenly crouched down on the spot. "Are you okay?" I called out to her with concern, and she replied weakly, "I'm feeling dizzy. It might be heat stroke." In a faint voice, she told me this. "I'll call an ambulance right away," I said, and I called an ambulance on my cell phone. Fortunately, there was a hospital nearby, so the ambulance arrived quickly. I also went to the hospital with her. The woman received an 4 drip, and 2 hours later she recovered and was fine. She had become dehydrated due to heat stroke, but because treatment was given early, she was able to recover without any major issues. She thanked me many times. "You really saved me. I want to thank you again, so please give me your contact information. My name is Riley Brown." Having said that, Riley handed me her business card. Looking at her business card, I was shocked. Surprisingly, Riley was the director of an internal medicine clinic called Brown Clinic. I'm a doctor, but I'm embarrassed to say that I've become dehydrated because I couldn't manage myself properly. I thought I was feeling tired since this morning, but there were so many patients. No, I'm glad you're safe, Riley. I also handed my business card to her. It was really good to be able to help people outside of counseling. I went home to my apartment with a refreshing feeling, but later I got a call from Riley and was invited to dinner. I thought I had done what any person would do, but Riley insisted on inviting me, so in the end I graciously accepted her kindness. The place chosen by Riley was a famous high-end restaurant. The atmosphere was very good and the food was very delicious. Riley, a pleasant woman, poured me a glass of wine and livened up the place with her witty conversation. While enjoying the delicious food and having a good conversation, Riley suddenly brought up this topic. "So, Sam, do you have a girlfriend or something?" "Me, I don't. Or rather, I'm ashamed to say, I don't have much experience with women." Riley seemed to understand my vague words. "Well then, why don't you meet with my niece? She's turning 28 this year, and I think she's a good age match with you, Sam." I was surprised at Riley's words. I was grateful to her for introducing me to this kind of matchmaking, but the truth was, I didn't think I had the luxury of being able to afford it. After all, my job wasn't going well, and I was even thinking about quitting. I was thinking about how to refuse, but in the end, with Riley's strong recommendation, I ended up meeting her niece on the following Sunday. Even if I did meet her, there was no guarantee that Riley's niece would like me. I never have been in love, and few women would be in love with me, a man who is not even flattering to them. Thinking about it made me feel a little more relaxed, and I headed to the hotel lounge where we were to meet. I arrived a little earlier than the meeting time, and as I waited nervously, I saw Riley. "Sam, sorry to keep you waiting. This is my niece, Yvonne. Nice to meet you. My name is Yvonne." I felt a strong heartbeat as soon as I saw Yvonne, Riley's niece. She was a tall, slender beauty with glasses, just my type. "Wow, she's beautiful." "My name is Sam Collins. Nice to meet you." Yvonne is a psychiatrist. "Sam, you're a clinical psychologist, so I think you'll have a lot to talk about. Now, you young ones, take your time." With that, Riley left the lounge with smiling. Sitting face to face with Yvonne, I was overwhelmed by her beauty once again. But there's no way a beautiful and successful woman like her, who's also a doctor, would consider someone like me. Yvonne must have reluctantly attended this matchmaking meeting because her aunt, Riley, told her to. In fact, Yvonne was dressed in a simple gray suit with natural makeup. Of course, Yvonne, who is beautiful to begin with, was still very attractive, but she didn't seem to be dressed up too much. She probably didn't want to have a matchmaking date with me. However, my conversation with Yvonne went surprisingly well. At first glance, Yvonne seemed cool, but in reality she was a very friendly woman with an exceptionally cute smile. "Haha, Sam, you're funny. As expected of a clinical psychologist, you talk so well." Saying that, Yvonne seemed to enjoy listening to my stories. It's been a long time since I've had a conversation with someone like this, as I've been quietly doing my office work at work. Also, since Yvonne is a psychiatrist, I learned a lot from her. Before I knew it, I was engrossed in my conversation with Yvonne and truly enjoyed this time. Even if it was just this once, I was honored to have a cup of tea with such a wonderful woman. That's what I was thinking, but to my surprise, she invited me to meet again. "I'd like to hear more about your work, so would you like to go out for dinner next week?" I was surprised by the unexpected invitation, but I decided to accept it. Just as my fun day was coming to an end and my mood was about to drop, her attractive invitation boosted my spirits again. But in reality, I feel like she's just inviting me out to eat as a friend, like a drinking buddy. There's no way a beauty like her would invite someone like me out to eat otherwise. I just couldn't shake off that feeling. I was taken aback because the restaurant we met at was more fashionable than I expected. There were many couples inside the restaurant. On top of that, Yvonne was dressed up in a beautiful dress and had her makeup done perfectly. It felt just like a real date. I was, as usual, dressed in a shirt and chinos, and I was so ashamed that I wanted to crawl under the rug. Oh. I should have worn a suit if I knew we were going to such a fancy restaurant. No matter how you look at it, I'm not matching up with Yvonne. And with the beautiful and glamorous Yvonne in front of me, more radiant than the first time I met her, my heart was racing. While admiring her beauty, I enjoyed the meal. That day, Yvonne shared various stories about her upbringing. When I was in middle school, my parents passed away in a car accident. Then, Aunt Riley took me in and I decided to become a doctor. Oh, that must have been tough. Yes, but now I'm happy. Although middle school was the lowest point in my life, I was able to recover from that setback by meeting a good mentor. Meeting someone can really change our lives. Still, your positive attitude is the reason why you are here now, looking so wonderful. Actually, I also met a school counselor in high school who inspired me to become a clinical psychologist. Really, I'm sure that counselor would be very proud to see you as a reputable clinical psychologist, Sam. Yvonne said that, but in that moment, my heart ached. I was trying to show her my good side, but in reality, I was not being recognized at all as a clinical psychologist. I was even considering quitting my job. I had initially thought I'd be happy if I could just stay friends with Yvonne, but every time we met, I felt special feelings budding for her. Recently, I have been feeling more and more like Yvonne was treating me as a potential romantic partner. I wondered why such a wonderful person would be interested in someone like me, but perhaps she was overestimating me. After seeing me try to present myself in a good light, discussing my work as a clinical psychologist, she may have misunderstood me to be an admirable person. But in reality, that's not the case at all. If I continue seeing Yvonne, I'll just become a huge coward. I should leave before we become any closer. Thinking so, I told Yvonne on our fourth date, we should stop seeing each other. I finally broke the news while we were walking together in a seaside park where you could see the beach. The moment I said that, Yvonne widened her eyes in surprise. Sam, what's wrong? Did I do something to offend you? No, it's not you, it's me. It's not Yvonne's fault at all. I confessed everything to her without hiding anything. Although I was talking about clinical psychology as if I was something special when I was with you, Yvonne, in reality, I'm just a worthless man who isn't valued at all in my workplace. As I was talking, Yvonne was quietly staring at me. I'm actually thinking about quitting now, and I'm nowhere near worthy of someone as wonderful as you. There are much better partners for someone like you than me. That's not true at all. I am who I am today because of you, Sam. What? I was surprised at Yvonne's words. But then, she told me a shocking truth. You might not remember, Sam, but we met once at the entrance exam briefing session for a correspondence high school. You and I did. Yes, it's quite embarrassing, but I was over 20 pounds heavier than I am now, so I probably look very different. What? That girl was Yvonne. It was only when Yvonne told me that the plump girl I met at the orientation before I graduated from high school overlapped with the slender Yvonne in front of me. I had no idea they were the same person. As I mentioned before, I lost my parents when I was in middle school. I started overeating due to the shock, and I became overweight. I was looked down upon at school because of it. That was one of the reasons why I stopped attending school and became apprehensive about men. Yvonne, you had such a past. She, too, like me, had a deep wound in her heart. To be honest, I didn't even feel like going to high school and wanted to keep shutting myself in at home. But when I heard your words at the entrance exam briefing session, I felt really encouraged. At that time, I reassured Yvonne, saying, I'm also going to graduate from high school in 4 years, but I believe that you'll have a fulfilling school life here too. I truly wished for her to find happiness, as she bore a gloomy expression. When my aunt suggested a matchmaking date, I wasn't enthusiastic at all. But knowing my date would be you, Sam, I was genuinely happy. I wanted to thank you for helping me in the past, but I didn't want you to recognize me from back when I was overweight, so I stayed silent. Yvonne confessed that when she'd previously mentioned being saved by a senior, she had been referring to me. That's why, Sam, please, don't say you're worthless. I love you, and because of you, I am who I am today. With these words, Yvonne gazed up at me through her glasses, her eyes misty with tears. She then nestled herself into my chest. Please, stay by my side, Yvonne. Unable to contain my feelings, I embraced her tightly. We returned to my apartment together and spent the night. It was a first for both of us, but we naturally merged our minds and bodies as one. I vowed to love her for the rest of my life. From that night on, I started calling her Vani, and we officially began dating. At the same time, I made the bold decision to quit my job at the mental health center. That didn't mean I planned to give up being a clinical psychologist. I planned to start all over again from scratch. It was my encounter with Yvonne that gave me such courage. The director of the clinic said finding a new job would be impossible, but I applied for school counselor positions and juggled work at several schools. Turned out, this work suited me better, and I was able to interact with many students as a school counselor. A year after switching jobs, I married Yvonne, and we built a warm family together. On our wedding day, Yvonne looked beautiful in her white dress. Even our Aunt Riley, who had been like a mother to Yvonne, was moved to tears. Seeing Yvonne as a bride makes me truly happy. As Yvonne's guardian, it must have been an overwhelming moment. For both her late parents and Aunt Riley, I vowed to make Yvonne happy. 3 years into our marriage, we were blessed with a baby boy, and our marital life was pure bliss. As we approached our 5th anniversary, we embarked on a new challenge. Aunt Riley set up a branch of the mental clinic and entrusted it to Yvonne and me. I intend to continue my work as a school counselor here. As we were watching over our sleeping son, Yvonne said, "We need to make this clinic good for our boy." I felt the same way. Our son might experience setbacks and heartaches in his long life journey. But it is in such times that people need to heal each other. As a clinical psychologist, I hope to deliver happiness to someone, even if it's just a little. With my beloved Yvonne by my side, I am confident that I can make this dream come true. My name is Steve Hart, a 41 years old, single man. I'm a local newspaper reporter in my hometown. I harbor a secret that I can't share with anyone. Truth be told, even at this age, I have no experience with women. There are various reasons for this, but in short, I guess I don't have the guts. I've had my chances. I mean, it might sound odd, but I do get approached by women from time to time. The issue of not being able to cross that final line was always a matter of the heart. After repeatedly hurting people, letting them down, I eventually got tired of dealing with people. If we're destined to break up, I figured it's better not to date from the start. That way, neither of us gets hurt, and I won't disappoint anyone by failing to meet expectations. Once I reached this state of mind, I found peace in my heart. Sure, there's a bit of loneliness, But I've come to terms with that as the price to pay for my peace of mind. The change in my life came this spring. Covering the local news, I was putting together a feature on cherry blossom cookies for the upcoming cherry blossom season. I had the chance to make these cookies at a well-established local bakery. A small shop run by an elderly couple, their only granddaughter, Jenny, who attracted customers. As they had no successor, it seemed that Jenny would eventually take over. I heard she had graduated from a culinary school with a focus on pastry arts. Thank you for today. Making these traditional cookies for the first time was a great experience. I'm sure I'll be able to write a good article, I said to Jenny, while enjoying the cherry blossom cookies and tea that I made myself. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I must say, seeing you in an apron was priceless. I had met her a few times at local Chamber of Commerce year-end parties. She was always surrounded by a lively crowd, and I could never get close to her at these events. It seems that she had properly found me, who usually drinks a small beer in the corner of the banquet hall. I always thought you were quiet and cool, so seeing you in a white apron was quite a surprise. I wish I had taken a picture for memory. As she chuckled remembering the scene, I felt a bit embarrassed. She's the face of this shopping district, a local icon. With her cheerful personality and charm, she's quite the celebrity around here. Although she is concerned about being over 30 and wants to give up the face of the shop, she's still popular. Cold vibe, that's the first time I've heard that. As I showed my surprise, she shook her head seriously. No way, you must know that there are plenty of girls after you, Steve. Leaning towards me, she said this, and I could feel my face flushing. She smiled at me from a distance where I could clearly see her pretty nose and well-defined eyelashes. So, I'm going to take a shot here. Please, will you be my boyfriend, Steve? What? It was so sudden that I thought my ears had gone crazy. You don't want to? As she looked up at me inquiringly, I didn't know how to respond. She was charming, and she seemed to have quite a liking for me. I didn't dislike her. In fact, I might even say that I like her. But it's not that I don't like you, Jenny. I just can't be with anyone. I don't have the courage to date. I tried to respond to her feelings honestly. I told her that I didn't plan on dating anyone. She seemed to think for a moment, then quickly smiled at me. But I like you, Steve. Don't forget that. I want to continue liking you. If I ever stop liking you, I'll tell you. She said this and put her hands together as if praying. Her fingertips were slightly trembling. From the trembling of her fingertips, I could tell she was serious. Thank you. I understand your feelings, Jenny. Upon hearing my response, she seemed to relax, the tension leaving her shoulders. From that day forward, Jenny and I started seeing each other more often. Most of the time, it was her who initiated it. To avoid giving her false hopes, I refrained from inviting her myself. I should probably refuse her invitations altogether. But I couldn't be cruel enough to turn her down. My indecisiveness might be hurting her. It might sound arrogant, but it's true that my heart ached every time Jenny invited me. Would you like to go to this great seafood restaurant I found today, too? Jenny had contacted me. She was always finding delicious places to eat or fun events and inviting me. As a local reporter, I really appreciated her suggestions. We arranged to meet at the restaurant over the weekend. The thought of seeing her bright smile made the weekend seem a bit more exciting. On the day of our meeting, Jenny, who is usually punctual, was unusually late. She is usually there before me, waving both hands to greet me. I was feeling anxious because she wasn't at our meeting place. She didn't show up even after 5 minutes. Thinking she might have had an accident, I was about to take out my cell phone to contact her when I heard, "Sorry to keep you waiting," and felt a tap on my shoulder. When I turned around, there was Jenny, looking a bit tired. "I'm sorry I kept you waiting. I was the one who invited you. I'm really sorry." Jenny deeply bowed her head as she said this. "No worries at all. More importantly, are you okay? Anything happened?" As I spoke, she lifted her head. The moment she did, I was taken aback. She was shedding tears. Passersby glanced at us. There I was, looking like a jerk, making a woman cry on the street. I felt hopeless, flustered, not knowing why she was crying. I suggested we sit somewhere, and guided her to a bench. During the walk, she kept repeating "I'm sorry," while her tears continued to flow. I was worried about what could have happened to her, my heart racing. After seating her on a park bench, I went to a vending machine and bought her a warm tea. She accepted the can of tea with both hands and said in a soft voice, "Thank you." Perhaps the warm tea had comforted her a bit. Finally, I was able to stop her tears. I waited patiently for her to share what had happened. "I'm sorry, I lost my composure. I've been nothing but trouble today. I'm really sorry." I tried to comfort her, smiling and saying, "It's okay. Actually, the cat I had for a long time passed away the day before yesterday. It was old, so I know it was its time, but that doesn't make it any less sad. I remember there always used to be a calico cat sunbathing in front of the pastry shop. So that cat had passed away. I had it with me for so long." Saying that, she began to tear up again. She had been with the cat until its last moments. I could tell from her voice that it hadn't been a painless death. Still, she had stayed by its side until the end, meeting its gaze. It's hard to have your wishes come true. She kicked a pebble at her feet as if she was a bit annoyed. Life's full of unfulfilled wishes. At my words, she nodded slightly. I've never had a pet. I'd never had a chance to raise a pet since I was a child. I had no interactions with animals. My grandparents, who raised me, didn't like animals. I barely have any memories of my parents. I grew up under the care of my grandparents. When I asked them about my parents, they wouldn't tell me anything. I only vaguely remembered my mother's face as she said, "I'll be back soon." She left me behind, and I never saw her again. It wasn't until I grew up that I realized I had been abandoned. I had been left by my mother. Since I didn't remember my father at all from the start, I didn't miss him, but about Mom, I have been so lonely. But I could never forgive my mother, who just said, "I'll be back," and left me behind. That's why I find it difficult to form relationships with anyone. The fear of getting close to someone, knowing we might eventually part ways, is overwhelming. The thought of waiting for someone to leave me, just like my mother did, is unbearable even to imagine. When I became an adult, I could have adopted a pet, but I never did. I would eventually have to see them off. Just imagining it was painful. I confessed to my girlfriend that I can't own pets because I can't bear to think of losing them. She looks at me, surprised. It's the first time I've talked to her about myself. "Thank you. I learned something important about you, Steve." The face that was crying a while ago turned into a gentle smile. She smiled as if to cheer me up. In the end, I decided to go home without having the seafood we were supposed to eat that day. When we reached the exit of the park, she stopped. She put her finger on her lips and said, "Shh." We could faintly hear a kitten meowing. She quietly approached where the kitten's voice was coming from. Her figure disappeared into the thick of the flower bed. And when she came out of the thick, she was holding 3 kittens in her arms. "I found them," she muttered, seeming a bit stunned. But still, she lovingly looked down at the kittens. "What will you do? Take them to the police station?" She looked puzzled at my words. "I'm going to take them home. I plan to raise them." "What, but won't you be heartbroken again? Why, aren't you scared?" My true feelings slipped out spontaneously. I mean, just a while ago, she was crying about parting with a cat, and now she's picking up abandoned kittens. I can't even understand that. In a few years, another heartbreaking parting will be waiting. Rather than imagining the future sadness, there's something more important. Jenny said this with a slightly sad smile. "Are you afraid of dating me, Steve?" Her words hit the bullseye for me, and I am at a loss for words. I felt a cold sweat trickling down my back. "I won't leave you, Steve. Can't you trust me just a little bit?" In Jenny's hands, the kittens were looking at me. She was looking at me with the same pure eyes. I thought that if I couldn't take a step forward here, I would be alone forever. "I may not be perfect, but I'd appreciate your understanding." At my response, Jenny nodded vigorously and laughed, saying, "Leave it to me." Half a year after we started dating, it came time to greet her parents. I had met her grandparents, who run a traditional bakery, several times. But this was the first time meeting her parents, who live in a different place. Fortunately, her parents warmly welcomed me. I was tense all the time, but it seemed to be okay. "My name is Steve Hart. I am in a relationship with your daughter with the marriage in view," I said as I moved my seat to bow in their direction. When I raised my face, her mother, Emma, covered her mouth with both hands, looking at me with a surprised expression. "Hart, you said Steve, right? Excuse me, but is your mother named Lisa?" Why was my mother's name coming from Emma, whom I had met for the first time today? I was so surprised that I couldn't respond immediately. Her parents were waiting for my answer, holding their breath. Taking a small, deep breath to compose myself, I replied, "Yes, my mother's name is Lisa, but I don't remember much about my mother. After she left me at my grandparents' house, she never came to pick me up." There was no point in lying. I told the truth. Upon hearing this, Emma began to shed large tears. You resent your mother, don't you?" Her voice was shaking with tears. "Yes, if I said I didn't, I'd be lying," I admitted. At my answer, Emma began to sob uncontrollably. Her husband quietly hugged her. I was confused by her repeatedly apologizing to me in a low voice, saying, "I'm sorry." As if she had sensed something, Jenny stood up and brought a picture from the shelf. Handed over to me quietly, I looked at the photo. In it were her still young parents and my vaguely remembered mother standing shoulder to shoulder. "Wait, this is my mom." With her emotions settled and tears finally stopped, Emma began to speak slowly. My mother and her parents had met in Colorado. My mother was a photographer who accompanied to high-altitude mountaineering trips. Even on the day of this photo, she was in the mountains as part of a TV program staff. Her parents loved mountaineering, and they had encountered my mother several times up on the mountains. Not long after this picture was taken, Emma slipped and fell. To call for help, my mother ran down the mountain as fast as she could. Apparently, the radio that the staff had brought along was unusable due to an error. As a result, Emma, who had slipped, was rescued by the rescue team that my mother called for. But my mother, it seems, had a heart attack at the mountain cabin and never returned. My mother was the savior of Emma's life. What a coincidence. But why did my grandparents hide the truth about my mother? I had always thought my mother abandoned me. She didn't abandon me, she just couldn't come back. When I later confirmed it with my grandparents, they said that it was my mother's dying wish not to tell me about her death. My mother, who was a professional photographer accompanying high-altitude climbers, had always said she didn't want me to know if she ever died on the mountain. She didn't want me to hate the mountains. My mother loved the mountains. And if I didn't know she had passed away, I wouldn't have to grieve, she used to say. I think it's a selfish claim. But somehow, I felt like I understood my mother's feelings. It's such a strange connection. Must be your mother's mischief, Emma said with a gentle smile. I will definitely make Jenny happy, I declared clearly to her parents. The next moment, Jenny hugged me happily. I'm not alone anymore. Thinking so made me feel more determined. When the wedding preparations were in full swing, I stayed at her apartment for the first time. It's embarrassing, but it was my first night with her. As the weather forecast announced the arrival of the harsh winter, it was very cold. She was excited and said, I got a new heater. I was nervous and my hands were sweaty. Gently, okay. Just as she whispered, and I gently reached into the heater, I heard a cat's voice. I tried to pull my hand out quickly, but it was a moment too late. I felt a sharp pain on the back of my hand. Ouch, it got me. When I pulled my hand out and checked, I had 3 scratch marks on the back of my hand. Oh, I thought you two would get along, she said with a disappointed face. Now, my nemesis are the kittens she picked up that night. Although they're kittens, they've grown quickly. It seems they don't like my presence, and they're on guard against me ever since I first set foot in the apartment. Attempting to touch the peaceful kitty under the heated blanket, I was immediately rebuffed. Since we'll become a family once we're married, I'd like to establish friendly relations with them tonight. However, the little guy hissed at me. They might think I'm trying to steal her from them. I, on the other hand, want to enjoy the soft feel of a cat for the first time, but I'm refused, and it gets me down. Hey, don't be so upset. They'll warm up to you soon. She comforts me, but a sense of anxiety lingers. Thinking too far ahead is your bad habit, isn't it, Steve? Indeed, I do often overthink the future, and it leads to a lot of anxiety and hesitation. Whenever that happens, she's always there to give me a gentle push. With a broad smile, she assures me, everything will be all right. I can't tell how much I've been saved by those words. Spurred on by her, I faced my mother's death. I dug up an old newspaper article about my mom, and together, we visited the site. Upon reaching the cabin, I found a picture of my mom among the photos hanging on the walls. In the picture, my mom had a big smile on her face. Looking at that smile, tears well up in my eyes. She gently rubs my back gently. At that moment, an older member of the rescue team who walked into the cabin spoke to me, his eyes welling up. Looking back and forth between the picture and me, he smiled and said, "We've been waiting for you." He was apparently an old friend of my mom. He said he recognized me right away because I look so much like my mom. I knew you would come visit someday. I've come this far in search of my mother's happy moments. Upon hearing this, he nodded emphatically. Then he pointed at a section of the wall and said, "Read this." There, I found messages written by regular visitors to the cabin. Among them, I found my mother's words. "Enjoy life even when you can't see what's ahead, Lisa." Finally, I received a message from my mother. Tears of joy, tears of sorrow, and tears of regret for having resented my mother. All flowed out together, unstoppable. She gently took my hand. "Next time, we'll bring our son or daughter along, Lisa. Yes, we'll come and show your grandchild." Telling this to my mother's smiling face in the photo, I felt as though she gave a slight nod. It felt as though one long journey had come to an end within me. From now on, My journey won't be a solo one. I'll live life to the fullest, even if the future is uncertain. That's the promise I made to my mom, because I believed that's the kind of life she wanted for me. How was that? Subscribing to our channel can motivate us to create more content. See you in our next video. An impudent, younger female boss. That was all she was to me. Caught in a sudden downpour, I got a glimpse of her true face. Do you want to see more? She provocatively whispers this, looking up at me, and I find myself holding my breath. Do you want to come to my place? Upon blurting out these words, her reaction was, my name is Michael Collins, and I turned 28 this year. Bear with me as I share a little about my background and the path I've walked. I was born as a winner. If I name the company I've worked, everyone would exclaim, "Oh, that one," in admiration. I was born as the son of the president of the company. Even though I was the second son, my parents loved me without any favoritism. It was already decided by the time I graduated from elementary school that my older brother would take over my father's business. So, I had to find my own path. Both my parents were passionate about education. I didn't hate studying, and fortunately, I was better than most of my classmates. I realized I was naturally smart, perhaps like my father, around the time I was in high school. A gift I was born with. I never took it for granted. I didn't slack off in my efforts to meet my parents' expectations. There was a part of me that felt that I was slightly better. My brother was a kind person, but I considered him an ordinary man. His only exceptional quality was his kindness. My mother said, that's an important thing, but I was dissatisfied with my brother. My brother, who had all the expectations of our parents and grandparents on his shoulders and was destined to take over the company, even though he was less capable than me. Back then, I must have been an insufferable, arrogant man. Looking back now, it was embarrassing. I reflect on it as the folly of youth. I earnestly wished that someday my parents would recognize my excellence and change their successor. But such a moment never came, and I graduated from university. Because I had such evil intentions, I wasn't very enthusiastic about job hunting. Still, I received job offers from more than 10 companies, including my first choice. While harboring dissatisfaction with the unresolved issue of inheritance, I was about to take my first step as a working adult. And then, I experienced my first setback in life. The company I joined as my first choice was a famous advertising firm. Once I joined, there were plenty of rich kids like me. The existence of me, who had always been in the spotlight, was quickly buried. I was disconcerted by the unfamiliar situation of not being the center of attention. I became increasingly anxious about not being able to control the situation as I had imagined. My inherently arrogant nature got in the way, and I didn't listen to my colleagues' advice, resulting in a disastrous mistake. It took less than 6 months for me to commit a terrible mistake. I can do everything on my own. It was a mistake caused by my arrogant belief. I stared blankly at my colleagues running around to cover for me and my boss apologizing to clients. I was broken from that point. The next day, I submitted my resignation. I never went to work again. I didn't want to interact with people anymore, nor did I want to meet anyone who knew about me. My worried parents arranged for a separate apartment for me, away from our family home. In a way, I was ousted and left my house, taking refuge in a provided apartment. Half a year passed, and I finally started going outside, but I wasn't in the mood for job hunting. I was unemployed. Every day, I focused on living lazily. I decided to live in a way that completely denied my former self. I continued such a lifestyle for a few years. I think I was able to return to society because of a series of small lucky events. The only entertainment for me during an Emilite period was movies. There was an art house cinema near my apartment. They showed slightly obscure films and old foreign movies in this small movie theater. At the end of the year, they also had all-night screenings, and it was a good art house cinema deeply rooted in the local community. One day, as I was buying a ticket as usual, there was a recruitment poster for staff at the reception. "Are you hiring staff?" As I received my ticket and asked, I was told they were urgently recruiting due to a sudden vacancy. At that time, I had no idea what kind of work an art house cinema does. They said it's a fun job if you like movies, and my interest was immediately piqued. I decided to apply for this job. The next day, I brought my resume. Immediately, I had an interview with the cinema manager, and I was hired on the spot. Everything went so smoothly, I remember feeling a bit scared. I was worried about what to do if it turned out to be an incredibly harsh company when I returned to my apartment. I was to start work from the day after the interview. I was quite anxious about what kind of job it would be on the first day. It seems that my work was publicity and sales. Publicity work included creating posters and flyers, creating displays within the theater, and exhibits. Outside sales involved purchasing and advertising the films to be screened. The staff was small and everyone was handling multiple tasks. "Hi, I'm Michael Collins. Nice to meet you." The person I bowed my head and greeted, my boss, was a girl who looked like a doll. I suppose I should call her a woman. But she really looked like a little girl. I was surprised again when I heard her age. She is 5 years younger than me. The cinema manager secretly told me that she dropped out of high school and was a part-timer. She seemed to have started working here after working multiple part-time jobs and being asked if she would like to work here. Her efforts after that were said to be tremendous. They also said she originally had good taste, and all the movies she purchased were hits. Now she's a famous super buyer in the industry. She and the cinema manager were in charge of my training. This is how I got a younger boss. A week passed in no time, with a younger girl as my boss. I was made aware of her abilities in this week. The skills I had developed during my student days were of no use. I was racking my brain every day over my incompetence. The cinema manager said, "Take your time to learn," but I had my pride as a man and as someone older. My enthusiasm ended up spinning its wheels and inviting failure. Every time that happened, she called me this. Junker. Junker became my nickname in no time. It wasn't sarcasm. I knew she was calling me that with affection. But for me, who had been going straight on the path to success, being called a Junker was also a humiliation. I'll take a revenge someday. This feeling would invite my next mistake. My boss, Claire, is as beautiful as a doll. She's short with a white complexion, giving her an overall delicate impression. But her inner character is robust. I've understood that painfully well over this past week. Generally, the people in this workplace are all quite quirky. The conversations here are often teetering on the edge of sarcasm. At first, I genuinely thought I had picked the wrong job. But after observing everyone for a while, I realized how naive my thoughts had been. What sounds like insulting banter isn't actually meant as such. And everyone is sincerely committed to their work. As a result, there might be arguments, but they're just temporary. Nobody engages in discussions that outright deny the other's opinions. Even as a newbie, They listen to my opinions and, although with a tinge of sarcasm, give me advice. The pace at which employees grow in a workplace where there's no need to pretend to know everything seemed different. Michael, have you finished ordering the flyers? As soon as she returned from the client meeting, Claire threw instructions my way. It's all good. The submission is done. Not bad for a Junker, Claire said and placed a gift, a cafe latte from a convenience store, on my desk. I guess she remembered that this is the only thing I drink when we are on outside calls. From the other desks, voices of complaint rose. Why don't we get anything? Don't be a baby. Go and buy it yourself. Even though everyone else is older, Claire is relentless. She's equally tough with the theater manager, making her practically the most powerful person here. I somehow feel a bit spoiled, but the theater manager laughs it off, saying that's just how it is with newbies. I can't always be babied by those younger than me. I pledged to myself, sipping the cafe latte. Sales is part of my job too. One day, I had an outside sales job. Claire was accompanying me. I had gone out with the cinema manager a few times, but this was my first time with Claire, and I was a bit nervous. To get me accustomed to going alone in the future, we visited a few ticket booths and bookstores. It had been sunny since morning, and the weather was nice, but after visiting about 5 places, the sky started to darken. It might rain. Do you have an umbrella? I don't usually carry an umbrella. Claire looked up at the overcast sky with a hint of anxiety. I realized I had never seen her carry an umbrella. I was about to ask why she didn't when suddenly, heavy rain began to pour. A sudden downpour. There's nothing we could do about this sudden heavy rain. Caught in the middle of a crosswalk, we started running. We managed to duck under a store awning and escape from the rain. Though we were soaked in the rain for just a few seconds, we were thoroughly wet from head to toe. I heard Claire click her tongue in annoyance. With a look of irritation, she took out a handkerchief to wipe her wet hair. Her makeup seemed to have smidged a bit from the rain. This sucks, she cursed, kicking my leg in frustration. I'm not the one who made it rain, you know. What? I looked down at Claire, and I felt a sense of discomfort. There was something different about her face. Her makeup was smeared, I think, but there was still something off. Observing closely, I realized what was causing this discomfort. Claire, did you have beauty marks under your eye? She must normally conceal them with foundation or concealer. 3 beauty marks lined up under her left eye. It felt like I had just discovered a secret about Miller, and it gave me a little thrill. Want to see more? She whispered, looking up at me, and my heart skipped a beat. It was pretty sexy. I was smitten by these suddenly revealed beauty marks. I've always had a thing for beauty marks. I'm well aware of it. Unconsciously, I moved a little closer to Claire and looked down at her. Do you want to come to my place? It's not far from here. Upon hearing my words, Claire's face turned bright red. I also started to feel a bit embarrassed. I tried to smooth things over, but before I could say anything, I got a swift kick in the shin. Ouch! Hey, what was that for? Shut up, you're such a Junker, stop talking nonsense. Claire spat out these harsh words, leaving me crouched there in pain as she ran off. The rain hadn't stopped. She'll be soaked by the time she gets home. I hope she doesn't catch a cold. I started to worry. When I returned to the cinema, Claire had apparently gone straight home and wasn't back at the office. The next morning, Claire's attitude was unmistakably cold. She was deliberately avoiding me. She wouldn't look at me, and her greetings were half-hearted. Even when I tried to discuss work, she handed tasks off to other seniors. She was systematically excluding me from her territory. Other staff members started questioning me. Hey, what did you do to her? It made things uncomfortable. During lunch break, I finally caught up with Claire, but she still wouldn't look at me. In a corner of the hallway, out of sight from other staff members, I confronted Claire. Why are you avoiding me? I'm not avoiding you. You're just imagining things, Junker. She glared up at me, and I couldn't help but recall what had happened the day before. As I gently rubbed the area under Claire's left eye with my thumb, the 3 hidden beauty marks reappeared. She glared back at me, not resisting my touch. Suddenly, my memory started to rewind. I had seen these beauty marks before. This was back when I was still a college student. Back then, I was arrogant and unlikable. I thought I was superior and couldn't imagine making a mistake. Both my classes and my social club felt like playtime, and I spent my time there aimlessly. There was a tavern that our club always used. An Italian-style tavern, a little fancy, perfect for wooing girls. That day, we had a mixer, 3 friends and 4 girls. I think most of the girls were interested in me. My buddy noticed it and began to get irked. I think if he's going to get irked, he might as well work on himself, but he doesn't seem to have that kind of ambition. Even worse, he started making passes at the young waitress who brought us our food. The girl, who looked about high school age, was blushing and clearly uncomfortable. Her hair was dyed silver and cut into a pixie style, adorned with several piercings. I thought maybe she was a bit rebellious. Because of her appearance, I assumed she could easily avoid the floret. But I soon realized that appearances can be deceiving. She was genuinely distressed. Unable to rebuke the customer too harshly, she seemed to lack the experience to handle the situation smoothly. Seeing this, I, who had been trying to charm the doll-like beauty sitting next to me, signaled her with my eyes to hold on for a moment. Hey, enough is enough. Can't you see she's upset? I reached out, grabbing my friend by the collar as he leaned towards the waitress. While he was flailing, I managed to tell the waitress, "Go ahead, get out of here." "Dude, you've crossed a line." I patted my friend on the shoulder, laughing and diffusing the situation. From inside the counter, I could see the waitress bowing repeatedly to me. There were 3 little moles under her eyes. That's right, now I remember. Wait, the waitress, from that Italian bar. At my outcry, Claire gave a sharp click of her tongue. I had frequented that bar many times until I graduated. I must have seen that face countless times. "Aren't you going to marry that doll-like girl?" Claire asked out of the blue. She must be talking about my girlfriend from college. A girl who looks just like Claire now. As I thought about it, I suddenly realized. I can't believe it, it might be my misunderstanding, but... Claire, is that outfit a cosplay? Immediately after, I felt a sharp pain in my chin and groaned. Claire's headbutt had landed right on my chin. I crouched on the spot due to the pain, and Claire stood over me, looking triumphant. "Choose your words carefully, Junker," she declared arrogantly, looking down at me and clicking her tongue. As she walked away, I thought I heard a quiet thanks for back then. "Cinema manager, I have something to ask you." I burst into the cinema manager's office and shouted that. The cinema manager laughed and said, "Oh, you've found out, huh?" According to him, he hired me because Claire wanted him to. Apparently, she asked him to hire me because I was her first love who helped her out, and now I was unemployed and struggling. Apparently, they even timed the job postings for when I was buying a ticket. I have been played by all the staff of this art house cinema. Claire had remembered the girl I was with at the time and tried to dress like her, she explained. It wasn't exactly cosplay, but it wasn't far off. The cinema manager laughed as he told me that Claire had sworn them all to secrecy about her change of appearance and everything else. Everything had been orchestrated by Claire. How roundabout. And yet I thought how endearing she was. The next day, Claire was back to the girl I remembered. It seems her black hair was a wig. Sporting a very short haircut with numerous piercings, slim black pants, and a white t-shirt. If she appeared like this for our reunion, I would have recognized her immediately as Claire. Claire, completely back to her old self, acted as if nothing had happened. During lunch break, I gently ask her as she stuffs a pastry into her mouth at her desk. "So I heard I was your first love. Have you always liked me?" Claire gave me a stern look and clicks her tongue. Then she turned her face away and said, "I hate you now." Caught off guard by her less than sweet response, I find myself saying, "What?" in surprise. Then, Claire, with a mischievous smile, turns her face towards me. "You're a real Junker, you know." Her lobes were slightly red. "Well, I guess I'd better graduate from being a Junker then. Please reconsider once I do." As I pet Claire's head, the headbutt comes flying into my side. Groaning and hunched over in pain, I stay crouched. "You're so cheeky for a Junker." Leaving those words behind, Claire walked out of the office. But I suppose I can wait. I didn't miss the words she added in a small voice. The day she would stand next to me wearing a wedding dress seemed a long way off. So, what did you think? Subscribing the channel and it gives me the motivation to create more content. See you in the next video. Because it's my first time. My wife, Samantha, spoke in a voice so soft it could barely be heard. Her face turning a deep red. Honestly, seeing her so bashful took me aback. This is amazing. I found myself so captivated by her. But our relationship wasn't always like this. My name is Jack Andrews. I'm just an ordinary guy working for a medical device company. I used to have a certain dream and I went for it, but I didn't have the talent. So, I gave up on those dreams. My parents had high hopes for my dreams. They encouraged me to pursue my own path, and that's how I ended up here. Now, I have no dreams, no ambitions now. When I lost my dreams, it felt like I was left empty, without a goal. You could say, marry someone and start a beautiful family, but unfortunately, I'm a bachelor with no girlfriend. It honestly pains me that I can't let my mothers see their grandchildren, but I have no choice. I can't give them what I don't have. Come to think of it, is that next week? I glanced at the calendar. Actually, I've been asked by my parents to return home next week. They live in the same state, a short train ride away, so it's no big deal, but they called in a serious voice, saying they have important matters to discuss. Judging from Mom's demeanor, it's not just anything. They are laid-back parents who rarely ask me to come home. Surely something must have happened. Given that I haven't provided them with grandkids, I want to be a good son in other ways. If they ask a favor, I decided to accept it. The day came. I returned to my childhood home after a long while. My parents run a diner, with the shop on the first floor and their home on the second. As a child, I used to boast, I'll take over the shop, but I lacked the talent for cooking and gave up on that path. That's why I'm hesitant to return home. But it's strange. They should be open every day except Thursday. It's odd, the shop sign isn't out. Are they closed just for today? I'm home, Dad, Mom, I'm back. Opening the door to the diner, both Mom and Dad were there. But they were both somewhat thin and their faces were pale. What happened to you two? I hastily approached them and they explained the situation, heads bowed. Apparently, a family restaurant opened up nearby, and our diner started losing customers. They tried their best to bounce back, but the customers only dwindled. When Dad started investigating why we had such a sudden drop in customers, he said there were anonymous rumors flying around about my dad's restaurant. Claims of seeing cockroaches, or the diner being dirty due to its oldness. There were strange rumors going around. There's no way to stop what people say. Despite my parents' efforts, the business sales only continued to decline. They even ended up in debt, which eventually made it impossible to keep the diner open. Even if we close the diner, the debt remains. Worst case, we might have to sell our home. We're sorry if you lose home to return to. Dad had tears of frustration in his eyes. His voice was shaking, and I've never seen him like this. Can't something be done? At least about the debt. The debt is $80,000. We are looking for a place to get a loan, but... Dad hung his head down. He must have done all he could. But without any solutions, he confessed to me. In desperation, I turned my gaze to Mom. And Mom, can't you ask for help from your friends? Well, I did talk to them, actually. One of my friends mentioned she might be able to help, but there is a condition. I leaned in, eager to hear more. Regardless of what the condition was, it was worth listening if help was on the table. Yet, Mom kept her head down, hesitant to elaborate. Encouraged by Dad, Mom finally broke her silence. The condition: she proposed marriage to her daughter. What? You know I used to go to the flower arrangement class, right? That's where I met her. Her husband is a CEO of a leading company, and their daughter apparently doesn't have anyone she's seeing. According to Mom, this daughter, Samantha, is shy and hasn't been able to find a partner, even though she wants to get married. This friend of Mom's seems to be very family-oriented, and said she would be willing to help us out if I marry Samantha and become part of their family. But Chag has the right to choose his own partner. I don't want to deprive your future because of our debts. No, I'll take the deal. I told my decision to my worried mother. I couldn't take over the family business. I couldn't protect this place that had always been precious to me since I was born. So, if getting married is what it takes to save the business, I'll do it. And after all, she's a CEO's daughter. It's a rare opportunity for an ordinary guy like me to have a connection with someone like that. There was a part of me that thinks it's a lucky break, the chance to help the business and maybe gain a partner and some connections. There weren't many downsides for me, so I decided to go ahead with it. But I see why she's not finding a husband. The day I met with Samantha, that was the thought running through my mind. She must be shy, indeed. Her gaze occasionally wandered away, like she couldn't look directly at me. On the other hand, I couldn't take my eyes off of Samantha. Well, to be more accurate, off her figure. Her double chin was so prominent that it looked like she didn't have a neck. And not just her neck. She didn't have a waistline. Typically, even average-sized women have some curves. But Samantha had none. If I were to compare her shape to something, it would be to a certain blue, feline-shaped robot from the future. I don't like to criticize people's appearances, but I have to admit, she had a strong impact. If you ask me if I wanted to marry her, I'd say no without hesitation, but I am not in the position to say that right now. Nice to meet you, I'm Samantha. I'm Jack. Pleasure to meet you. Samantha shyly responded and made her greeting. I also nodded in response, and after discussing, we officially became engaged. A month later, we got married and officially became a couple. There was some discussion about living together, but marriage was a non-negotiable condition for repaying the debt. I had no reason to refuse. Perhaps understanding the situation, Samantha suggested that we don't force ourselves to live like a typical married couple, but let's come together in our own way. So we ended up sharing a bedroom, but not a bed. The so-called wedding night has not yet taken place. Well, with Samantha's physique, sharing a bed would honestly be a squeeze. We were both used to living alone, so it was a bit awkward at first. But it seems that Samantha had always aspired to be a typical wife. Good morning. I tried making breakfast, if you like, please. Just before I left for work. Samantha, who had gotten up early, had prepared breakfast. Chicken soup, fish, and omelet. It was a hearty meal. The aroma of the food tickled my nostrils, stimulating my empty stomach. This is delicious. Even though I quit, I once aspired to be a chef. I have a discerning palate for food. So, I can say with confidence, Samantha's soup is truly delicious. And it's not just the soup. The seasoning of the fish is just right, and the omelet, its color, shape, and taste are all perfect. The quality is as good as any restaurant. This is amazing. It must have been tough to make breakfast of this level, right? It's delicious. I was so engrossed in my breakfast, Samantha's face gradually turned red. I'm glad. Be confident. I'm a diner owner's son. After all, Samantha, you're a great cook. With that, I finished my meal, not hiding my genuine opinion. Samantha, she shyly hid her face behind the tray she was holding. Well, I've never served my homemade food to anyone before. I'm happy. Though she appeared extremely shy, seeing Samantha genuinely happy was adorable. They say don't judge a book by its cover, and that might be true. Samantha, aside from her looks, has a very playful and adorable personality. She's so domestic that you'd forget she's a CEO's daughter, and she almost flawlessly manages household chores. Except, it seems like she's not very good at doing laundry. The other day she ended up turning all my shirts blue. She seems to still be getting used to sorting by colors. I'm sorry. They've turned completely blue, haven't they? I've made that mistake before too. A mistake that would depress me if I had made it, somehow becomes forgivable when Samantha does it. I slowly fell in love with Samantha. At first, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but by the time we had been living together for 6 months. What am I going to do? The doctor said I might not be able to have a baby. One day, Samantha came home crying. Apparently, something had come up during her health checkup. I can guess why. I don't necessarily expect us to have children, so don't cry so much. But with my current figure, you won't be able to hold me, Jack. I choked up. Emotionally, I am perfectly able to love Samantha. But it's pretty tough with her 200-pound figure. While I was struggling for words, Samantha seemed to make up her mind, looking at me determinedly. I've decided. I'm going on a diet. What? I want to live a long life, and I want children. Also, I want to walk proudly by your side, Jack. I can't stop Samantha, who says this while blushing. Samantha made up her mind, and thus, she began her diet. Exercise is good for health, so I also joined her in the effort. I was just starting to worry about my waistline. I suppose I've put on some happy weight. It can't be helped, Samantha's cooking is too delicious. We go jogging together before work and walking every night. But, as expected, it's not easy to keep up. I can't do it anymore. I won't spoil Samantha when she whines like that. This was a promise between me and Samantha. If she felt like giving up, I would be there to support her. So, when Samantha looked ready to give up, I proposed something. Hey, Samantha, I have a suggestion. What is it? How about we buy a dress? Here's my idea. I will buy the dress that Samantha wants to wear the most right now. And Samantha will work hard on her diet so that she can wear that dress. It's easier for people to have a goal in front of them. That might be a great idea. I've never worn a dress before. Samantha was on board with the idea. Additionally, we decided to separate our bedrooms. This was because Samantha wanted to do stretches and yoga at night. If I'm being watched, it's embarrassing, she said. If she makes a request like that, wouldn't you want to fulfill it? And so, Samantha continued to put forth great effort. Half a year later, by the time we were married for a year, Samantha had become astonishingly beautiful. I hadn't realized it because she was overweight, but she originally had a good figure. With her chest and butt standing out and her waist slimmed down, Samantha, now with a great figure, looked like a different person. Her weight dropped to the goal weight of 117 pounds, and Samantha came running to me, beaming with joy. "Jack, I'm going to try on that dress today. Really, I'm going to change in the bedroom. Wait for me here." With that, Samantha headed to her bedroom. The bedroom, come to think of it, for the past year, we haven't slept in the same bed, had we? With the way Samantha is now, we could probably share a bed. In fact, isn't this the first time I've been allowed into her bedroom since she lost weight? Thinking like that, it felt almost like our wedding night. After all, Samantha had always strictly kept me out of her bedroom. "It's your first time in my room, isn't it? I'm looking forward to our first night." My heart skipped a beat, wondering for a moment if I'd accidentally voiced my thoughts. As if she had read my mind, Samantha laughed, "I'll be changed," and shut the bedroom door. After a year together, we were comfortable enough to joke around like that. But her shyness hasn't changed. Just before she shut the door, I caught a glimpse of her blushing ears. After a little while, I put it on. "Come in." Upon Samantha's invitation, I entered the bedroom. This is my first time wearing a dress. How do I look? There stood Samantha, blushing, yet gracefully wearing the red dress I'd bought. She looked stunning. Her beauty, resembling that of a goddess, left me dumbstruck. "This is incredible. You look stunning." Those were the only commonplace words I could muster up. Samantha was that beautiful. She was enchanting and alluring. Yet, despite her appeal, she was blushing and fidgeting adorably. Do I look weird? Not at all. You're beyond beautiful. Really, truly. Yeah, I'd rather not have you walk around outside like that, though. Upon hearing that, Samantha chuckled happily. "Oh, stop it, but I'm flattered. I'm just telling the truth. I mean, what if some strange guy comes over?" I muttered, a hint of anxiety in my voice. Samantha, in all her beauty, smiled. "In that case, you'll protect me, won't you?" Her blush was so very Samantha-like, and I chuckled in response. I resolved in my heart to protect Samantha at all costs, and gently closed the bedroom door. From then on, time continued to pass. Welcome. Believe it or not, I took over my dad's restaurant. Quitting my job and paying off the debt was one thing, but it was no easy task to bring a reputation-damaged restaurant back to life. But now, we've transformed into a popular restaurant with lines from the morning. "Jack, take this to table 5. "Got it, Samantha. How's the meal for table 8? It's almost ready." Yes, it's Samantha in the kitchen now. When I explained the situation of the restaurant, Samantha said she wanted someone to try her cooking, given the lack of popularity. "Jack, you praise my cooking, right?" That gave me confidence. To be honest, I was convinced that if Samantha cooked for the restaurant, it would surely succeed. That's how much I trust Samantha's cooking skills. She's always loved cooking. She even admitted to gaining weight from eating too much of her own cooking. That's actually an ideal skill for running a diner. Even though the customer traffic had dwindled, it wasn't zero. I pleaded with our regulars to try Samantha's cooking. Her culinary skills were soon recognized, and customers started to return. In fact, some people even come in daily to eat. I help out in the kitchen, but primarily, I handle the management and front-of-house work. Creating a place where Samantha can fully utilize her talents, that's my job. I'm home. The restaurant's door creaked open around the evening. It was still early for dinner, so there weren't many customers. Into this quiet scene entered a boy carrying a backpack. "Welcome back, Jake." "Dad, I'm hungry. Ask your mom to make something." Yes, the elementary school boy who just walked in is Jake, me and Samantha's son. Actually, after Samantha's successful diet, she got pregnant and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. "Mom, can you make something?" "Oh, you really eat a lot, don't you? Just wait a bit." Our son, nagging for food because he's hungry, calls out to the kitchen. Watching this scene, I can't help but smile. Right now, I'm happy. I have my loving wife, my adorable son, and I get to live with them both in the restaurant I've always wanted to protect. Samantha and I, it's crude to say, but we married because of a debt. It's probably not what you'd call a good match. But I can say this from the bottom of my heart. I'm glad I married you. How did you find that? Your subscription to the channel really motivates us to keep producing. See you in the next video.